Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are turning away from the spreadsheets and the policy documents, shifting our focus inward.
We are. It's a very different kind of analysis for us today.
Right. Our source material for this, which we're calling Between Echo and Memory, is less a report and more a profound meditation.
It really is. It comes from the author, coach, and mentor, Lóng Tíng.
And it continues this conversation, the one you, the listener, have been following, about that intersection, where East meets West, where tradition informs modernity.
That's right. And I think it's important to state up front, this dive is intensely personal. It's a deep breath into the internal landscape of a guide who, well, usually helps others navigate the external world.
So our mission here isn't just to summarize his reflections.
No, not at all. The mission is to gently, meticulously unpack his insights on profound, repeated loss. And more importantly, the counterintuitive force this loss has become in driving him toward intensely intentional living.
We're looking for the universal wisdom that's woven into these very specific private memories.
And the source material itself, the tone of it, it speaks in this distinctly warm, reflective, and calm voice.
It's almost like receiving a long letter from a wise friend on the quietest day of the year.
That's a perfect way to put it. He's analyzing the quiet moments that truly stay with us,
Yeah.
the ones that carve a space inside us. He's asking a fundamental question.
What shapes us more than the noise?
Exactly. And it's an immediate challenge to our assumption that life's milestones are always these loud, big events. His starting point is the inverse.
That the silences, the absences, are actually the most potent architects of our character.
That's it.
Okay, so let's unpack this central paradox because it really does run through every single word of the source. Lóng Tíng suggests that profound loss, the very wound of absence, is the engine.
It's the engine. It's the drive shaft that turns grief into profound closeness.
Into relentless intentionality. And maybe most surprisingly, into a deep, abiding gratitude in the present moment.
The very thing that broke him is what taught him how to hold things together.
It's a radical reframing, isn't it? Grief isn't a detour from the path.
It's the foundation of the path itself. And to understand that foundation, we have to start where he starts. We have to look at the architecture of the loss itself, the framework of what he terms the silent wound.
The whole narrative really begins with this raw, almost stark admission. It sets the stage for everything that follows.
He states it so plainly. I have never really been able to say goodbye in my life, not to my friends, not to my child.
And that inability, that lack of the final ritual of closure, whether it's a word or just a physical presence, that's the seed of his entire struggle.
And ultimately his transformation.
But the source details exactly why this was the case. It wasn't just bad luck.
No, he's very specific. These losses were not the slow, anticipated declines that might allow for some kind of measured farewell. He emphasizes they came suddenly, brutally fast, without warning.
And often due to aggressive, rapid forms of cancer. That velocity, that speed of departure, I think that's absolutely key to understanding the trauma that follows.
It is. Because that speed annihilates the opportunity for closure. There was no time for a final word, no holding of a hand, no shared final breath.
So the psychological mechanism of saying goodbye, the way our mind integrates the physical finality of death,
Yeah.
it was just bypassed entirely.
Bypassed by the brutality of the event. And when that happens, the mind just justificates.
Yeah.
It struggles. The story remains open. The loop is never closed.
When that ritual is denied, the grieving process lacks its natural structure. And this is where he introduces a really powerful slow-motion metaphor for the cumulative effect of these sudden disappearances.
You say these losses piled up quietly like snow.
That image is so evocative, isn't it? Because it immediately tells you this experience wasn't like an emotional avalanche or a violent storm.
Right. Snow is silent. It's often beautiful. Initially, it seems almost benign.
But it accumulates, layer upon layer, until the sheer weight of it changes the entire landscape. And you barely notice that weight building until the structural integrity of your world is fundamentally threatened. And the result of this silent, unrelenting accumulation is what he calls the silent wound.
This is such a crucial distinction. This is not trauma that constantly screams in acute pain. That would be an open wound, something that's raw and immediate.
So the silent wound is something different.
It's something always present. It's been integrated into the internal architecture. He describes it as a shadow that knows exactly when to step into the light.
Okay, let's linger there for a moment because that's a fascinating concept. How does one live with a structural wound like that without letting it become a debilitating open wound? If it's always present, how does he maintain that famous calm and reflective demeanor we associate with him?
And that's where the analysis of architecture comes in. Think about it this way. An open wound demands immediate resources, constant attention, bandages, healing time. It consumes your present.
Right, it's an emergency.
It's an emergency. A silent wound, by contrast, is like scar tissue that has fused with the structure itself. It's integrated, not ignored.
So it only causes pain when certain pressures are applied.
Exactly. But it's also, in a way, the strongest part of the structure, precisely because it was tested and hardened in silence. It's a source of resilience, not just pain.
So it's not acute, it's foundational. It informs the entire architecture of his being now.
It has to.
And this brings us directly to the immediate, practical impact on his present life, because he connects this historical accumulation of absence directly to his current, almost aggressive presence.
He draws a straight causal line. It's not abstract. He asks the question, then answers it himself. Maybe that is why I see people so consciously today.
Maybe that is why I listen the way I do.
And crucially, maybe that is why I hold every encounter with both hands. The deficit of the past isn't something he's trying to fill with sorrow. He's transforming it into a current abundance of attention.
And this is really where the robust how and why of his entire philosophy emerge, is because he couldn't hold the hands of the people he lost in their final vanishing moments.
That he holds every hand he can now. Metaphorically, in the sense of attention, and sometimes literally, with this immense, almost fragile care.
This feels like the practical application of the silent wound. If he's in a coaching session, he isn't just listening to the words being said.
He's listening for the gaps, for the silences, for the things the client hasn't been able to say yet. That experience of the unsaid goodbye makes him hyper-aware of the importance of full expression and recognition in other people.
The foundational realization that he derives from all this accumulated quiet grief is a truth that is, well, it's simple, it's devastating, and it's entirely stripped of illusion.
He learned how fragile everything truly is.
And once you truly learn that, you can't unlearn it.
You can't. It's the ultimate constraint. It strips away the illusion that we have guaranteed time, and it replaces it with the stark reality of vulnerability.
That realization is the cornerstone of his philosophy of deceleration and conscious living.
Of course. When you truly understand that fragility, that any encounter could end in 10 hours or 10 days or 10 years, you stop treating it like it's an endless resource. You treat it like a precious, vulnerable artifact.
It sounds beautiful, this philosophy, but I have to introduce a moment of skepticism here. Lóng describes this state of being, but how does he practically prevent regression? When that shadow knows exactly when to step into the light, how does he maintain that conscious presence instead of just being consumed by the acute pain that the shadow represents?
I think that is the daily internal work, isn't it? The source material implies that the maintenance of the silent wound requires constant redirection. The pain serves as a guide, not a master.
So when the shadow appears, he doesn't fight it or deny the pain?
No, he uses it. He immediately uses it as a reminder. This is the reason you must be fully here now. The memory of unsaid words forces him to speak his truth immediately. The memory of unheld hands forces him to fully engage right now.
So it's an active choice.
It's a constant active choice to use grief as propulsion toward the present, rather than allowing it to be an anger dragging him backward into the past.
The trauma is channeled. It's transformed from a source of potential paralysis into a source of energy.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And that transition, moving from the pain of loss to the foundation of intentionality, allows us to pivot to the second major theme he introduces: the people who built the internal framework that allowed this channeling to happen in the first place.
His grandparents,
Yeah.
his anchor.
Yes. He shifts focus immediately to the people who provided that initial structure against the coming chaos. And he makes a very specific delineation here.
He does. He explicitly states that when he thinks of the people who shaped him, he doesn't focus on his origin family in the conventional nuclear sense. He focuses on his grandparents.
He calls them simply my home, and critically, the ones who saw me, truly saw me.
That distinction, truly saw me, is extremely telling, isn't it? It implies a sense of acceptance, a safety, a recognition that goes so far beyond just superficial affection.
It's the recognition of the whole person without judgment, and that is absolutely foundational for self-dignity.
And he doesn't just talk about it abstractly. He paints these specific, beautiful memory details that instantly make her presence tangible. This is lived reality.
Right. He focuses on the sensory details of his grandmother. her water blue eyes,
The warmth in her smile.
and the psychological impact of her presence. She made the world feel less sharp.
Less sharp. That's such a profound observation from a child's perspective. It suggests the outside world was often abrasive or overwhelming or demanding.
And she didn't change the world for him. She served as a protective buffer, a psychological filter that it softened the edge of reality for him. She was the quiet, constant refuge.
She provided the stability. And what were the actions they shared? Not grand adventures or material wealth.
No, it was simple, repeated domestic rituals. Cooking together, baking together.
Sharing afternoon coffee. These routines, which he admits he only understood much later, were not just activities. They were crucial anchors.
Well, if the external world was sharp and unpredictable, these rituals were the physical embodiment of consistency.
Yes, they provided a predictable rhythm. And that is fundamentally important for a child's sense of safety, especially a child who was destined to experience such profound unpredictability later in life.
And it's within the context of these quiet domestic rituals, over the smell of baking bread or a simple cup of coffee, that his grandmother offered what would become his guiding philosophical principles.
And they were delivered in the rhythm of daily life, not as some formal instruction. They were just part of the fabric of their time together.
These three principles, which form his philosophical compass, really need to be fully excavated. They are the essence of the grandparent anchor, the antidote to the sharpness of the world.
Okay, the first one is a mandate for action, and it integrates emotion and rationality. She told him, whatever you do, do it with heart and with reason.
That's the Eastern balance of yin and yang applied to just doing the dishes or doing your homework.
It is. It's not enough to be passionate. You have to be smart about it. It's not enough to be logical. You must invest yourself fully. It demands this alignment in every single action, ensuring your work is whole.
And in a modern context where we're so often told to separate emotion from professional life, or on the flip side, just to follow your passion and let it overrun logic, this directive is actually revolutionary. It demands integration.
Bring your whole self to the moment. Then there's the second principle. This one is purely about internal integrity and character.
Which is so counterintuitive in our current performative, achievement-driven culture.
Exactly, she said. When you look at yourself in the mirror in the morning, you shouldn't regret who you are.
Notice it's not what you've achieved. It's not about success metrics. It's about congruence. It's about aligning your actions with your values so that self-judgment is minimized.
It prevents that quiet shame that so many people carry around with them. It demands an ethical baseline that is absolutely non-negotiable.
If you regret who you were yesterday, not just what you did, but who you chose to be, then you can't really move forward with dignity, can you?
You can't. Which brings us to the third principle. And this one connects directly back to his current intense presence and his conversational style.
It's the simplest and maybe the most profound in what it demands of us.
See every person consciously.
That means paying attention. It means moving past surfaces, recognizing the inherent worth, the universe, as he later calls it, in the other person. A concept we'll definitely revisit.
And Lóng Tíng admits that when he was younger, these were just things adults said. They were just words. They lacked weight.
But now they're his survival manual. He concludes that his grandmother was teaching him dignity. But let's analyze that. How does this teaching of dignity connect back to the central theme of inevitable loss? What was the deeper purpose?
The author concludes that she was teaching dignity, but defined not as mere outward behavior or politeness, but as internal congruence and inner strength. This is a critical psychological insight.
So dignity is the stable, immovable core.
It's the core that allows one to withstand external chaos, sudden change, and profound sorrow without fracturing.
So she wasn't teaching him how to be successful, but how to be sturdy. She was subtly providing a philosophical shield that would protect the soft parts of himself.
You have to wonder, did she know what kind of test that dignity was truly preparing him for?
It's impossible to say.
But the source implies this dignity was preparation for exactly the life he was destined to lead. A life where people would leave suddenly, where his resilience and his capacity to stay soft would be continually tested.
Let's talk about that idea of staying soft.
Staying soft, remaining empathetic, vulnerable, and present is incredibly difficult when the world repeatedly strikes you with loss. Dignity provides the core stability required to maintain that softness.
It ensures that the silent wound doesn't turn him cynical or shut down his heart.
That's the key connection. The anchor of the grandparents provided the dignity required to channel the trauma of the silent wound rather than being crushed by it.
And this moves us now into a section of immense emotional weight. The loss that encapsulates both the fragility of the world and the immense capacity for love.
We move to the quiet room, the life of his son.
This is the most acute and specific loss detailed in the source, and it provides the ultimate test of the dignity that his grandparents taught him.
He mentions his son would have been 26 this year, on December 24th. So he's anchoring this memory to that deep, reflective time at the year's end.
And the heartbreaking brevity of that life. He lived only 10 hours. That phrase alone, too short, too fast, too overwhelming, it just explains the initial impossibility of integrating that loss into any understanding of the world.
It defies logic. It defies the natural order of time.
And the source contains an additional layer of pain that compounds this whole theme of unsaid goodbyes.
He wasn't allowed to see him. Not once.
The hospital protocols, the immediate aftermath. Everything stripped away the possibility of physical recognition or a final acknowledgement. This is the ultimate unsaid goodbye, the greatest physical deficit.
To lose a child is a trauma of its own magnitude. To lose a child after only 10 hours without ever having laid eyes on him, it creates a vacuum that feels metaphysically impossible to fill.
It does. And yet, despite this impossible pain and physical absence, the author speaks of a complex transformation of this specific immense loss. This is the emotional alchemy we really need to dissect. How does he carry this memory now?
He describes his son's memory as having been carried not as an open wound, but as a quiet room inside my life.
A quiet room inside my life. We have to spend time on this spatial metaphor. This is not just poetic language. It is an architectural decision about how to integrate profound grief.
It is. An open wound, like we said, has no walls. It bleeds into everything. It colors every experience.
But a quiet room has boundaries. It's a space that is reserved, respected, always there, but it's integrated into the larger structure of the home.
It represents resolution without forgetting. And most importantly, it represents a choice.
It is absolutely a choice. To build that room, you must first acknowledge the materials, the 10 hours, the unheld hand, the immense love. And then you have to set boundaries.
Right. The quiet room is not for daily dwelling. It's a space for reverence, for remembering the lessons, but it's not the living room, which is where the present-day connection and intentionality happen.
It would be so tempting to either ignore the quiet room, to brick it up,
Or, conversely, to move all your furniture into it and never leave. The dignity he learned helps him respect the boundaries of that room.
So the quiet room is the mechanism. It's the framework that prevents the silent wound from regressing into an active open wound. And what did that brief existence teach him? He distills two profound and deeply connected lessons from those 10 hours.
The first lesson mirrors the earlier one on fragility, but it's intensified to its absolute limit. The world's ultimate, undeniable fragility. If a life of 10 hours can be taken, nothing is safe. All our expectations of duration are simply projections.
That's the devastating truth. But the second lesson is the counterweight. It's the redemption.
How much love can exist in such a minuscule amount of time?
10 hours of life equals immense, eternal love. This requires a complete reordering of how we perceive time and depth of feeling.
It completely shatters the notion that love is proportional to time spent together. We tend to value things based on duration, the 30-year marriage, the decades-long friendship.
And Long Ling Ting shows us that the intensity of the connection, the pure, unadulterated essence of love experienced in those 10 hours, is sufficient to fuel a lifetime of intentional action.
The capacity for love is proven in the shortest possible window.
Which means the duration of an encounter is irrelevant to the depth of the feeling and the subsequent impact on the self. This is a crucial lesson for someone who then finds himself holding every brief encounter, every client meeting, every afternoon coffee with both hands.
Yes, the 10-hour life forces him to see the universe in the 5-minute interaction. The intensity of that specific, immense loss becomes the ultimate measure of the present moment. He no longer judges a moment by its potential longevity, but by its quality of presence.
And this synthesis leads directly to his larger conclusion of presence. He describes these lost people, his friends, his grandparents, his son, as walking with him, but he says they do so gently.
They're no longer sources of immediate paralyzing grief, though the sorrow remains a part of that quiet room. They are now sources of perpetual, gentle presence. They serve as constant reminders.
Reminders to see people, to hear them, to take them in with intention. The quiet room and the silent wound coalesce into an active, daily guide for living.
The burden of the past is transformed into the blueprint for the present. Grief is not an obstacle.
It's a navigational tool. Which brings us perfectly into the intentional present, the active practice of softness and strength. If loss is the engine, what does the resulting journey of life actually look like day to day?
Well, the author describes the cumulative weight of loss not as something that finally broke him, but as something that fundamentally refined his present experience. It gave him this necessary internal clock adjustment. It forced a radical new pace.
He calls it deceleration. And he states so profoundly, when you lose many, you stop rushing through life.
He shed the illusion that speed equals progress. He realized rushing is simply a way of missing the precious moments that you can't get back. Speed is the enemy of presence.
So the entire pace of his existence shifts from external metrics, like how much can I get done, to internal quality.
And this change manifests in a fundamental shift in perception. He starts treating moments like breaths, vulnerable, precious, and unrepeatable.
A breath is something necessary for life, something brief, and something we take for granted until it's threatened.
Exactly. Once you realize how easily the breath can be taken away, like the 10-hour life, every single inhale and exhale, every moment becomes sacred.
Okay, so if he is treating moments like breaths, what are the specific, tangible results of this transformation in his human interactions? How does this accumulated loss make him a better coach, a better friend, or a better mentor in the practical reality of Lóng Tíng Enterprises?
He distills it down to 3 powerful, connected statements that really define his new depth of interaction. First, he says he loves deeper because of loss.
Knowing the finite nature of love expands the capacity for it rather than diminishing it through fear.
Precisely. The knowledge of absence forces him to maximize presence. Second, he says he sees clearer because he has walked through darkness.
The profound sorrow acts like a lens cleaner. It strips away superficiality and distraction.
When you have faced the abyss, you are less concerned with surface achievements and more focused on the hidden complexities and vulnerabilities in others. He sees the underlying dignity or lack thereof in every person he encounters.
And the third result.
He holds people closer because of the moments they couldn't hold, the ones who mattered most. This is the most direct application of the silent wound, compelling him toward both physical and emotional closeness in the present. He learned the lesson of physical absence so profoundly that he refuses to be emotionally absent now.
Let's discuss the texture of that required strength. We established that dignity allows him to stay soft in the face of chaos. Is softness just vulnerability, or does it require constant active choice? And how does his strength prevent that softness from just becoming weakness?
I think softness is the chosen strength. True softness, in his philosophical framework, is the willingness to remain open and empathetic, even when you know that openness makes you vulnerable to future pain.
So the strength is not in building walls.
No, which is the default human reaction to loss, isn't it?
Yeah.
Protect yourself. His strength is in maintaining the structure that allows the quiet room to exist without becoming a fortress. The strength prevents the softness from turning into naive fragility. It is the ability to absorb impact without closing down.
It's so interesting to see how this immense intentionality is internalized, especially during times of heightened reflection. He details this seasonal reflection, specifically when December arrives and the world grows quiet.
And when that annual silence descends, when the anniversary of his son's brief life approaches, one would expect the primary overwhelming emotion to be sorrow, or maybe even the resurfacing of rage at the injustice of it all.
But he says the emotion that rises is fundamentally and surprisingly gratitude.
Gratitude. Gratitude for the warmth, for the time they did share, even the 10 hours of life. Gratitude for the moments of connection with his grandparents, the tiny rituals like the afternoon coffee that became anchors.
He's grateful for the people who made me more human.
And this is an active, mature act of reappraisal. He is shifting the focus from the agony of their absence to the sheer, incredible gift of their presence, however brief it was.
It's the psychological closure he's creating for himself, recognizing that the lost person lives on not through perpetual grief, but through the quality and humanity they enabled him to live right now.
And that gratitude extends even to the love that remains, the echo of the memory, even when their bodies are long gone. This is where you really see the synthesis of East and West, the acceptance of impermanence, which is fragility, combined with the deep reverence for ancestral influence, which is the anchor.
And that brings us to the final synthesis. After walking us through this deeply personal architecture of loss, dignity, and present intention, he brings it all together.
He reflects on the life that is woven from these distinct threads. What happens when these two metals, the anchor and the crucible, are finally forged together?
He concludes that his life is woven from 3 core threads: loss, closeness, and depth.
Loss provided the perspective of fragility. Closeness provides the drive for conscious interaction in the present.
And depth is the resulting quality of his awareness, and they're inseparable. You can't have one without the others.
And this internal weaving is what defines his public persona, particularly his communication style as a coach and mentor. This is the source of his renowned ability to connect with people,
It explains why he speaks the way he speaks, why he listens the way he listens.
and why he moves through the world with that very specific combination of strength and softness.
The strength comes from the resilience required to navigate the quiet room and the silent wound.
And the softness comes from the persistent vulnerability required to stay open and connected. They are truly two sides of the same coin, forged by the same history. The softness is a strategic choice, not a default state.
This philosophical conclusion culminates in a powerful restatement of his grandmother's third principle, but it's amplified now by all the intervening sorrow and transformation.
He reaffirms the central philosophy derived from loss, which is the foundational guide for all his encounters. Every person I meet is a universe.
A universe, complex, vast, infinitely valuable, and tragically brief. That recognition demands a specific kind of respect and absolute intentionality in every encounter.
Well, if every person is a universe, you cannot afford to rush the interaction. You must dedicate time to exploration, knowing that the journey might be very short.
The author then performs this final inventory of what, in the grand scheme of things, is ultimately irrelevant when life is stripped down to its core.
What doesn't stay? Not the noise, not the surface achievements, not the shadows of old, irrelevant fears. Those are just temporary, distracting movements on the water surface.
But what does stay?
The encounters, the quality of the human connection, the ones that shaped us, the ones that held us, the ones that stayed just long enough, whether it was 10 hours or 30 years, to fundamentally change the architecture of who we are inside.
And this leads to his final reflective conclusion, which is more of an acceptance than an assertion. It's the realization of ultimate sufficiency.
And maybe that is enough. Maybe that is everything.
The encounter is the legacy, the echo, the memory. That is the meaning.
Wow.
That was a journey that it really demands a moment of quiet reflection, precisely the kind of moment that Lóng Tíng champions. So let's quickly recap the core journey of this deep dive for you, the listener.
We moved from the burden of the silent wound, that accumulation of unsaid goodbyes and the inability to grieve ritualistically, to a profound intentionality that is fueled by gratitude.
And the key synthesis seems to be the fusion of two seemingly disparate ideas. On one hand, the dignity taught by his grandparents as the protective shell.
And on the other, the ultimate fragility revealed by the loss of his son as the guiding lens through which he sees the world.
So the ultimate application is clear. His past losses compel him to be fiercely present today. He treats every moment, every person with the sacred respect of a breath, knowing how quickly it can all just vanish.
His pain does not make him cynical. It makes him fully human.
And the practical challenge for you listening now is pretty clear, isn't it? Are you rushing through life because you assume time is infinite, or are you practicing the conscious encounter?
The author's pain serves as this powerful, gentle model for prioritizing connection over distraction, for integrating your own silent wounds into the strength of your character.
And this leaves us with a final provocative thought, something that builds directly on the emotional math of the quiet room. If the most important legacy is the quality of the human encounter, and Lóng Tíng learned immense eternal love from a connection that lasted only 10 hours, a powerful, intense, yet fleeting memory, how does that memory shape our obligation to be fully present for the connections that last years or decades?
That's the question, isn't it? We so often take the enduring presence of our long-term loved ones for granted. We buffer our attention. We assume tomorrow will look just like today. But does the echo of that profound, brief connection, the 10-hour life, force us to treat the 10-year friendship, the 20-year marriage, or even the daily interaction with the cashier with a heightened sacredness?
Are the quiet rooms you carry inside you trying to teach your present self that same lesson of ultimate attention?
A powerful thought to end on.
Thank you for joining us on this particularly reflective deep dive into memory, loss, and the architecture of an intentionally lived life.
Until next time, be present.